Hello and welcome to the M&A Science Podcast. This podcast is part of a mission to rethink how M&A is done. The old school seller-led approach, it's dead. Buyer-led M&A is all about strategy, alignment, and efficiency, putting value creation at the center of every deal. And let's be real, it's not just about closing the deal, it's about making it successful. We uncover what truly works in M&A by learning directly from the best. I'm your host, Kisan Patel, founder and CEO of Deal Room and chief scientist at M&A Science. Joining me today is Stefan Williams, vice president of corporate development and Snowflake Ventures at Snowflake. Traded on NYSE under SNOW, Stefan leads Snowflake's acquisition strategy and oversees its corporate venture capital and startup accelerator programs. Stefan is at the forefront of how Snowflake scales through smart M&A and strategic investments, giving us a rare look at how a data giant stays ahead in a competitive AI-driven world. Today, we'll explore how Snowflake uses a disciplined, cultural-first approach to acquisitions, when it prefers strategic investments over buyouts, and how its corporate development team aligns venture bets, startup partnerships, and M&A to support growth. Stefan, how you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Welcome to Snowflake.
Thanks for hosting me. I love the campus. This is awesome.
It's great, yeah. New digs, we moved in, I think, around 3 or so months ago. April timeframe, I think.
It's great.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking time from doing deals to have a conversation with me.
Thank you for having me.
Can we kick things off a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So I moved to the US in 2011. I started at a boutique investment bank in the Bay Area, focused on IT service, software companies. Quickly realized I wanted to be in-house and came across a company called Genesis, which is in the contact center, customer experience management space. Did a big deal with them, did a handful of deals. The biggest and most notable was with a company called Interactive Intelligence, which is a public company at the time. It was, I think, for around $1.5 billion back in 2015. And quickly realized, obviously, SaaS was a real thing. And as I moved from a company that was migrating from an on-prem to SaaS environment, SaaS was obviously clearly a motion and a deployment model that was gaining a lot of traction. And so when I was doing my research, ServiceNow was a company that started to get onto my radar. I joined ServiceNow in 2016. That's where I met Mike Scarpelli, who joined, and Frank Sluman, who both came to Snowflake eventually. But that's where I first met them. I was part of the corporate development team there. We did a handful of acquisitions. We stood up a venture CVC, corporate venture capital arm, where we invested in companies that were interesting to ServiceNow at the time. And then in 2019, when Frank Sluman came out of retirement and Mike Scarpelli moved from ServiceNow to Snowflake, if there was ever an opportunity to go to another rocket ship, you follow those two.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to come and join Mike here at Snowflake, where my charter was to stand up a corp dev team. We were at a point in time when it was pre-IPO. The company was obviously getting a lot of traction, and there was no rigor or process around inbounds. Right? Companies often come to you and talk through strategic alternatives, and there was really no one at the company that had any kind of experience and a way to kind of navigate those waters. And so I was brought in to be corp dev number one or hire number one and build out that process.
Build it out from scratch?
From scratch, yeah.
So startup banking, got it inside with corporate development at Genesis, then went to the rapidly growing company that's ServiceNow. Didn't have enough of that, so you did it again and started from scratch here at Snowflake.
Yeah.
Originally from UK?
Yes and no. Born in San Francisco, raised in the UK.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm one of the only local San Franciscans that you will meet, because most people come from other places. I was actually born there.
I wanted to ask you about culture, because I feel like I have to. Snowflake is very recognized for a unique culture. if anybody hasn't read the book, Amp It Up by their very well-known CEO, Frank Slootman. Could we talk a little bit about what makes the culture at Snowflake unique?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely evolved over time. I came over when Frank took the reins. I know that Bob Muglia beforehand had a different way of running the company, but Frank's an absolute force and an operator that can execute. And so Snowflake had this incredible technology, and bringing Frank in, which was which brought this muscle of clarity, the ability to execute, move fast, and really enable the selling motion that Snowflake had on top of this incredible platform. Over the last year and a half, Sridhar's been at the helm, and as an engineer by trade, has really kind of accelerated the velocity of which we're able to develop product. And he's leading from the top in terms of, he acts as if, as he expects others to act. And so he puts in 110% every single day, and expects that from everyone that, he works with to operate at a level of excellence. It's an imperative in this AI-driven world that we're in. The world is moving so quickly. Technology is moving faster than it ever has, with things like coding agents and productivity tools that are available to us now. And so the world's moving faster, and we need to continue to move quickly to stay on top.
Does that mesh well with your UK upbringings?
I mean, it's been 15 years in the Bay Area now, so I think...
So you've adopted.
I've adopted. Look, I think I'm a sports guy at heart, and so I love competition. I love kind of being in the heat of those moments, and I think we're in a battle right now. There's this incredible opportunity to be kind of an enduring business, and we've got a seat at the table where there's a real opportunity to go and get that. And so, as a competitor, I know many folks in the company are highly competitive, and we want to win.
I think the word that stuck out was excellence. Yes. I actually had a friend that has been at Snowflake for a number of years with Frank and the predecessor, and has seen a dramatic shift in terms of the impact like leadership makes on the organization. And it had some very interesting things of ways of describing it. I think one phrase I heard was, "It feels like you're going to get fired any day," but there was like attributed to the greatest experience in professional development that person's ever had, that brought the best out of them. So I feel like that's, I wanted to bring that up because I think it's going to come up in this interview. I think the thing I'm really curious about is, if you look at an organization that is committed to that excellence, it drives growth. I mean, ultimately that's what the goal is to be competitive and win. And if you experience that in these last two organizations, and that's why I'm really curious, because I think there's very, very few organizations that can actually pull off that high growth velocity organically and then still manage acquisitions with it. And that's where I'm really curious to learn from you is, how do you do that? If we want to jump right into it.
Yeah. So maybe rephrase the question. How do you think about M&A in a high growth company?
Exactly.
There's a flywheel that's moving, and I think in the early days there's a muscle that needs to be built around M&A. It happened at ServiceNow, and it's happened at Snowflake, where you start to look at ways in which you're able to accelerate the velocity of which that flywheel moves. So from a product and technology perspective, what are the palatable acquisitions, small groups of people or teams and IP that you can bring into the company that can accelerate the velocity of which you're able to build product? And I think that's the case, at least within my experiences. M&A is a muscle that needs to be built. You can go as a deal person, go in and execute a deal. But the reality is the company needs to digest and make that successful. And it's not just me doing the deal. There's a team around us that are working through that, the product integration, the people integration, the technology integration. And so starting small is something that we've always done. At ServiceNow was exactly the same case, where we started small. And when I say small, it's sub 100, even sub 50 people. And bringing on those teams, creating success, proving out the thesis and the rationale, measuring success against what you thought you were going to do, and using that as a way to kind of think about expanding that muscle into new and innovative and interesting areas.
So the main driver, well, it sounds like, is to build product velocity
at the beginning. So yeah, I mean that continues, right? And I think when you're growing so fast, M&A, we talk about this muscle, but it takes a lot of energy to integrate. So there's senior people in the company that need to make sure that they're directly responsible and sponsors of the acquisition. It takes a lot of time for them to go and cross-pollinate, make sure that cultural values are kept together, not that they're not ostracized, that we're setting them up for success. And so I think starting small has always been helpful, but when you're growing at 100% or 50+%, like there's less of a need to go and think about a new growth engine. It's more a case of, holy crap, we've got to hold on to this. This rocket ship is growing so fast. I remember Snowflake in the early days, it was growing 100+% year on year, and you're like, wow, let's just keep the car on the road and keep going forward, and less of a need of, where do we find more growth? It's more, how do we harness the existing kind of growth that we have? And I think over time, as obviously the base gets bigger and the growth rates come down, you start to see a little bit more appetite on a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And I think the pin up of that is Salesforce, right? They've done a bunch of acquisitions trying to kind of hold on to that 20% year on year growth. And so as you mature as a business, I think the appetite to do more and bigger acquisitions definitely increases. And I think having that muscle being built over a number of times of doing smaller acquisitions and iterating on that and perfecting that process and allowing the business to catch up on what does it mean to integrate a company? What does it mean to bring these people on board to the mission and make sure they sign up for this charter and show success? Like that's something you have to do over a number of different deals.
You really have to build an M&A muscle. It sounds like a lot of this linchpin is around the integration. You got to make sure that you get that right, and that takes some time to really build that capability around. And then the cultural values.
Yes.
This is going to be a big one. Can you walk me through what it was like starting an M&A function from scratch? Like, where do you start?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember coming in, and it was pre-IPO for us. So it was a lot of it was getting IPO ready and making sure the S1 is in decent shape. Less attention on, we need to go and buy companies, more how do we make sure we kind of get out and do it right. And so I came in. I remember I was effectively interviewing the different product leaders in the company, whilst learning the business as well. Because Snowflake's not an easy product at time to. Databases aren't an easy technology to comprehend. Snowflake is an easy product to make it work and abstract that complexity. But learning about the database space and then interviewing different subject matter experts and product leaders internally was where I started, and making sure that you have strong alignment with the leaders in the company, the people that are driving the strategy, driving the innovation and where the product's going, was week 1, week 2, month 1. That's where you start.
All right, so start off, get to know your key people in-house, product leaders, SMEs, make sure you're aligned with where they want to go. What is the conversations like? Are you do you guys have any product gaps we can solve with M&A? Like, what does that look like?
I mean,
are you leading the horse to water, or are they kind of?
It depends where you are on the stage. Like there's, and this even happens today. Like, you're trying to make sure that you're plugging yourself into the drivetrain of the company as to where are we going, and how are we getting there. And so it's very much like, this is the beauty of what I think corporate development is that whilst it's kind of very financial, you need to understand how to model, you need to understand the finances, you need to understand how, funding environment, venture capital, diligence, all that stuff. But on the other hand, you're an increasing expert. You're learning in product, right? And that is continuously evolving. And so you have to become a student of your industry. And understand what the product roadmap is. What are we looking? What's the broader mission of what this particular area of our business is trying to do? What is our development timeline to get there? Understanding the different companies in that space. What are the landscape of vendors operating in that space? Talking to them. So we'll probably get onto this later, but how do I speak to as many CEOs as I can? How do I speak to as many venture capitalists that are investing in this space as I can? And how do I speak to as many internal subject matter experts as I can? And so how do I educate myself continuously on the areas that we need to be going and spending time in and start to form an opinion? And I think that's one of the unique places we get to sit at in Corp Dev, is that you get those three kind of really important data points, whether it's VCs, entrepreneurs and CEOs and internal stakeholders, that allow you to start forming an opinion. And so that, the best corporate development professionals are those that are able to weave the math, the finance, the VC type mindset along with product strategy and understanding and getting into the pulse of where the business is trying to get.
Does that naturally just shape in your M&A strategy, or is it a bit more to it?
100%. I think that there's a couple ways to look at it. So one is I'm understanding the different product motions internally, and I'm trying to form an opinion on, look, it's going to take us 12, 18 months to go and build this. Let's go and have conversations with these companies and think about what we're able to do to accelerate those motions, and how do we think about the time value of money and the benefit that brings us and our customers. You can also think of it, you can get, as you get bigger and more scaled, you start to look at it from a top-down approach as well. What are the different markets, the opportunities, the adjacencies that make sense? And you can kind of do more of a top-down approach as well. So you're trying to tackle it from all directions and pressure test existing build paths and holding people accountable to delivering, products when they say they're going to deliver those products, and using that as data points going forward. I think the one thing you'll always hear is, but we can build that. That's easy. Well, not easy, but we can build that. We can have that in 6 months. And in reality, it's a lot harder to go and build things. I think products can be built relatively easily, but there's magic to product market fit.
That's true. That's a whole other.
So fighting that battle consistently as well.
The Buyer-Led M&A Summit is back October 30th, hosting over 1,000 corporate development, private equity, everybody on the buy side. You'll hear from the best in M&A from companies like Quadient, SBS Commerce, iSolve, State Street. These are all leaders who have built repeatable, scalable M&A strategies. You're going to learn how to prioritize deals, execute diligence under pressure, bring integration all the way to the front of your deal process so you can realize synergies faster. Did I mention we're going to do a live M&A Science podcast with Keith Crawford, the head of Corp Dev at State Street Capital. Whether you're new to the industry or a serial acquirer, this is an event you don't want to miss. Hope to see you there. Bye. Is it fair to say there's almost like there's two views? There's a sort of internal view that you gather from all these conversations around the product vision, and then you sort of like product velocity is your ultimate goal. Then the other view, you mentioned the top down, and that's essentially the traditional like market mapping exercise to know where you sit in the current market, what are the adjacent markets, and have that view.
100%. Yeah. And I think the earlier you are on as a company on your corporate development M&A journey, you probably start on the logical accelerators and teams and talent and IP that you can bring in to help you accelerate. And at least we have. And then as you mature, you start to probably lean a little bit more on the more broader strategic top down thinking, and you'll always be doing both. And you'll always have a perspective on both, but I think as a company, at least the ones that I've been involved with, it seems to have been on that spectrum of start small and then think about the bigger ones.
How does that get socialized? Is it you sitting out the C-suite and talk to the board? Like how does it ultimately get alignment across the organization?
Yeah, aligned is a word that I'm told I use too much.
What's your job?
It's maintaining the right relationships across the organization. Like one of the threads I was talking about was just managing those internal relationships with different product engineering, go-to-market leaders, having an incredibly tight relationship with our head of product, our head of engineering. I'm lucky enough to be in a position where one of the companies we acquired, the CEO of that company is now the CEO of our company, and so I have a naturally a good relationship and a good functioning relationship with him, where I have the ability to talk through and kind of soundboard and make sure that I'm not kind of going down a rabbit hole without at least some level of alignment. So we have regular cadences with the different leaders internally, and try to bubble that up into different themes and to make sure that we get the right executive exposure. And there's obviously memos that get drafted, and those are used to kind of further iterate on what makes sense, what doesn't. Are we spending our time in the right areas? Are these the right priorities? And you go from there.
I mean, so that just tends to get a little bit more public in the organization when you're sharing those memos.
No, try not to. I mean, M&A is pretty sensitive. There's usually impacts both internally and externally around when you're doing an acquisition. So we try to keep it pretty buttoned up. There's a team.
So it stays pretty much right at
sponsors,
the leadership level, business units.
Usually there's more. So yes, at the leadership level, but there's also deal sponsors that you're basically part of a team. So corp dev is one arm, and we help kind of navigate and help folks make sure that they're walking the right path as it relates to the process we have. But we're working with them to build the business case that ultimately the team stands behind and gets conviction behind, and promotes to the executive leaders with us. Right? It's not just corp dev saying, "Hey, we want to buy this company." It's no, it's a team of people that collectively believe this is the right thing, and that team is small, and it's cross-functional. So it usually stays within those teams, and then obviously with the executives in the company.
And that's a kind of evolving process. You get the strategy, obviously environments.
It lives and breathes. It's iterative. It's every week it's being tinkered and updated, and
What was it like building out your team? Like, who was the first role you hired for? When did you hire them?
It was we went public. And we started to get a lot more activity, and we started to buy a company or two. And it was clear that I couldn't be the only person doing this. And so I did bring on one, I think at the time, a manager, which was kind of a mid-level corporate development professional to kind of help with some of the blocking and tackling, so that I could at least up-level myself a little bit and make sure that the ship was still being steered in the right direction. So that was about a year or so into my journey at Snowflake, and it's kind of we started a venture group and about a year in, and I think we made our first investment in late 2020. And again, it's clear that that's a different motion, right? There's a different motion around how you think about investing in companies, and I think maybe 2 years in we brought in somebody that was going to focus a little bit more on the venture side of things. And then, you go from there.
And then you have venture, you also have partnerships?
Charter is M&A, it's ventures, it's startups, and strategic partnerships.
What do startups mean?
Startups, so as a platform, Snowflake is extremely relevant for startups. We can abstract the ability to get a company and a product up and running extremely quickly. We can be a core component of their infrastructure. We can be a very interesting deployment model that gives them access to data, AI, and enterprise customers. And so there is a whole community that are building products on top of Snowflake. And our startup team, Snowflake for Startups, is a group of people that can help startups think through the right partner programs that we have. We have accelerators, we have different programs, we have technical resources. And so there's the whole effort on how do we make sure that when startups are thinking about building data-driven applications, data and AI-driven applications, that Snowflake's a component of that conversation, and that team is chartered to go and help those startups stand up their businesses and be successful.
Interesting. Do you consider that still like part of the inorganic?
It's not really. It's part of what I was saying earlier is that, I'm speaking to VCs all the time. I'm speaking to startups all the time. I'm speaking to internal stakeholders all the time.
Okay.
I think as part of that, you start to get plugged in the startup ecosystem. It's part of how you keep a finger on the pulse.
Interesting.
And so, I think about six plus months ago, the opportunity came up, and to take over that team, and it's been an incredible expansion of my charter, and we've been able to make some real headway in terms of the communities that are starting to build on Snowflake. We have an annual startup competition where I think we had nearly 1,000 applicants that applied for the startup competition that was that ultimately came to a presentation at our user conference in June. And then we've got some great things around the SVAI hub coming up. So the SVAI hub, it's the Silicon Valley AI hub. It's here in our Menlo Park office on the top floor. It's a dedicated space for startups to come in and collaborate and have as a workspace, and to talk about data and AI. And obviously Snowflake's a key component of that. And so it's a really interesting way to keep your finger on the pulse. So when I put my M&A and venture hat on, I'm well read, I'm informed, I know what's going on, especially within the Snowflake ecosystem.
The venture group, I'm familiar with M&A, right? We talked through that, but what's the thinking behind the venture group? And I'm curious because I feel like it's evolving in the industry. Because I feel like there was this, I just did a podcast kind of calling it version 1, version 2, where originally it was similar to the venture, where you wanted to make some bets and look for a return on it. Now it's like more of a focus on getting access to technology or IP so that you can sort of accelerate without, necessarily acquiring the early stage startup that might have a crazy high valuation.
So we did something similar at ServiceNow. I think the great thing about Snowflake is it's a consumption-based business model. And so when we can enable a startup to work with Snowflake and solve customer problems with their data, that customer is getting more value from the data they put in Snowflake. They're likely more sticky, and they're likely driving more consumption. And we make money when customers drive consumption or query their data. And so from a venture perspective, if we can use ventures as a tool in a suite of tools, one was obviously the startup team and all the programs and benefits that come with that. But for those that are really showing product market fit, that are showing customer success, it's a tool that we can lean on for that truly is strategic capital, where we want to put wind behind the sails of a motion that we know is working and that can really help a broader suite of customers if they only had the opportunity. So when we invest, we actually formulate a strategic partnership or a commercial agreement whereby we get in a room, we get the smart people in the room, we talk about what are the integrations with the two technologies that we can round out and build that's ultimately going to lead to better customer experience and better customer traction. And we say, okay, whether it's 1, 2, 3 phases over 6, 12, 18 months time, what are the things that make sense such that we're doing the right thing for the customer, and we agree on those. We also agree on, okay, well, once we hit these different milestones, we think here's the go-to-market things that we can do to actually drive traction across our sellers, across our customers, across our partners. And we document that. And we put it, and it's our North Star. But we've all agreed that these are the integrations that we're going to do collectively, and largely that's on the startup team to go and build those integrations out. And if these are going to achieve, we're going to go and put these go-to-market motions in play. And I think that really brings this kind of strategic narrative to the investments that we're making. Here's a company that's typically doing something pretty interesting with AI and data. Something that's probably resonating with some Snowflake customers, and something that's actually going to be doing a lot more in the future if you want to sign up for whatever they're offering. And so there's some real go-to-market motions that we can enable to these startups. So long way of saying we're not investing to get eyes and ears and to potentially acquire. We're investing to build an ecosystem around AI and data in service of our customers, and so they can get use of data in in more ways than just from Snowflake. They can actually get it from, they can utilize their data by using best of breed products across a common underlying data platform that is Snowflake that might touch, Snowflake typically would service the CIO, but now with partner X, the CISO or the CHRO or the CRO or the CMO now can actually start to use and get functionality through applications powered on data that they already have.
So you get them as a committed customer, and then you're able to help them accelerate their growth with the go-to-market, which...
So customer, sometimes, and there's different deployment models. So yes, sometimes they can be Snowflake's customer directly. Others, we can actually be a deployment model for the partner. So partners can actually connect into the customer's underlying Snowflake in a secure and governed way, and get access to a technology without having to go through a bunch of vendor security risk assessments and governance and legal requirements. And so as a startup, I'm a 5-person startup based in some random country in the world. If I'm building and deploying within the boundaries of Snowflake through Snowflake's marketplace and with a Snowflake customer, you're able to do so with much less friction, and you're able to do so at enterprise customers. And so now you can go and deploy, AI-enabled data applications at the biggest companies in the world as a small startup without having those lengthy vendor risk assessments, that take months and that hinder business.
That's interesting. I think that's why we see this model like popping up with other ecosystem plays.
Yeah.
Just create the startup fund, but it's more, now I get a real sense of why they do that.
So it's a win for Snowflake. Obviously, more data gets put in Snowflake. Customer stickiness drives consumption. Yes. For the customer, they get to activate and use more of the data that they have in Snowflake across many different lines of businesses and workflows. So I would say, best of breed data platform with, best of breed modular applications that sit on top of that in a common underlying data infrastructure. And then the partners, they get streamlined go-to-market and they get access to data to empower their applications. And to the extent we can show real success, we can lean in more on the go-to-market side as well. So it's really it's a 3-way win, which is organic, and it's not a stick, it's a carrot.
I asked about the journey about building the M&A function. Now you've already expanded it to the 3 different pillars. You went from M&A, venture, then the startup/strategic partnerships. When we talked about the team, right? You sort of brought in a mid-level person. I take it they're helping with more of the execution, like financial modeling, quarterbacking diligence.
Yeah.
How did the team expand from there? Did you bring in like leads for these different groups and just things kind of built more naturally? They were already somewhat stood up. So there's teams that were in place. We've got people in the startup team that have been here for 10 years. Okay.
They were part of the sales organization when it very first started. And so that those are folks that have already been established. And I think there was a natural alignment between the two teams where it made a lot of sense. We were having the same conversations. The startup team was talking to venture capitalists. They were talking to startups. We were talking to venture capitalists and startups. And it's like, hang on, why are we having the same conversation twice? And so a lot of it was like streamlining the systems and processes internally to
Makes
unlock,
sense.
a lot more efficiency. And now I feel like we've done that. Now we're on the offense. We're working as a team and driving, business.
So that makes a lot of sense on this sort of front end, right? You've got alignment on the strategy, you're getting the right people in place, and everybody's getting sort of aligned on what the goals are. When it comes to going back to what we mentioned, like the biggest risk is the integration, right? If that doesn't go right, and I like how you made that point, you sort of start off small and build up to it. Was there anything there that you had to do to get the organization ready to actually be able to ingest organizations?
Yes. There was a couple of early deals that, when you get the deal done, you ring the bell, you pat each other on the back and you're like, great, let's think about the next one. Or there's some leader in the company comes down on the next deal that's like the next highest priority, and suddenly the company just acquired, it's not really top of mind. And, there were and had been balls that were dropped. And so we did bring in somebody on the integration side. So we have an integration. I have an integration, one person that focuses on lot of the project management and integration efforts, and make sure that nothing's dropped, because there's definitely this when a deal is on, and you come very tunnel vision on getting that deal done, and you can lose sight of some of the smaller things that maybe in and of itself aren't gonna break things, but over time they start to accumulate and things start to get dropped. And so it was extremely important to bring on this integration lead who had 6-7 years of integration experience directly onto the team, so that when we do, I think it was 8 to 10 deals in 1 year,
Wow.
where we needed it, right? And that was really where we kind of had to make sure that we were a scaled team.
This is where we turn into like a little bit of therapy session. We might revisit some painful memories here, but bear with me. When we think about this first 1-2 acquisitions, what were those like lessons learned, if we want to frame it that way?
Yeah.
That sort of got you thinking about what needs to change.
There's always lessons learned, whether on completed deals, but also deals that don't materialize for one reason or another. And we try to do a good job of making sure we take some time after every deal to think through what are the things that worked, what are the things that didn't, what do we need to change, what should we do more of, and document it. And so we've done a pretty good job of making sure that we're learning from our mistakes.
Stefan, when I do my first deal, I'm going to screw a lot of things up, and I'm trying to shorten my learning curve here. So if you can just kind of give me a few things to make sure I know.
I can't think of any. I mean, the first deals that we were doing, they were very small in nature. Look, I think one of the things I've learned is that once you do a deal, and we talked a little bit about it on the integration side, but on the product side, like who's directly responsible for the success of that integration? Because everyone has different priorities and everyone has things that they need to get done. And if you don't have one person or maybe two that are directly accountable to the success of the deal, and make sure you have defined timelines post-acquisition to get back in a room and talk through, here's what we said we were going to do and here's where we're at. Like, be honest. Hold yourself accountable to what we said we were going to do and where are we at on a regular cadence, 30, 60, 90, 180 after the deal, days after the deal. I think that's a very important thing to just not lose sight of. Because again, as deal people, we get excited by the next deal. And once you get it, it feels like, another notch on the belt. Like that's just the beginning. When you do the deal, that's the beginning for the company, right? And so how do you integrate yourself and be part of that process to make sure that it's successful? Because guess what? If it's not successful, you're gonna have a harder time doing the next 1, 2, and 3 deals.
Accountability of integration, and then having some clear
owners,
timelines. Owners.
You need somebody to have as a directly responsible individual. We call them DRIs.
DRIs. All right. I like that. This is helpful. So first deal, double down on that. Make sure you got folks who are really going to hold accountability, ownership, DRIs for the integration, and then have clear timelines.
Yeah.
It's good. These companies, when you acquire them, we talked about culture earlier. How do you look at that? I guess then versus now, is it, do you look at an organization and it's more about you're identifying a culture fit and that sort of lens to make a go, no-go decision? Is that part of it? Is it more of this is how we're going to change this company's culture, or this is maybe going to modify our integration plan based on their culture? Like, everybody's got a different view. I don't know. Curious what yours is.
Culture is super, super important. And it's hard to kind of put your finger on, ask these 3 questions and you'll have the magic number, by magic answer or magic number. I often kind of allude to M&A being like the process of getting married. It takes many different engagements and interactions to kind of validate, is this the right person for me? And, do we have the right values? And how do we think about these things? And who's my political views? Whatever it might be. And so I think culture and trust, you discover and get that over time. And I think that's part of diligence, right? It's part of why, at least in my experience, and I know it has happened in different deals, but M&A isn't done really, you can get deals done in a month or whatever time frame it needs to be, weeks these days. It's really relationships are built up over time.
But now here's the thing, like I take it you're not buying all your assets on auctions, because if you really want to build relationships, you got to take the buyer-led, be proactive out there, building relationships ahead of time.
100%.
Is that most of your deals?
Most of our deals are very much not the first time we've engaged. Yeah, we've obviously we would have typically engaged with them beforehand. Not all of them, but most of them. But coming back to the concept of culture, how do you identify whether the folks are the right culture or not? I think it's something that is you get a perspective on over time. And the earlier you can have conversations with companies that maybe at the time you're not looking to acquire, but you have a relationship, you have a partnership, you've won some, you've had joint customer success. Like all of that kind of leads into understanding how the company operates, how the company thinks. So it's something that's got over time.
So it's just like dating. You got to spend the time.
It's very similar to dating. You got to you got to put the time in. You got to ask the right questions. You got to understand the incentives of people. You need to understand how they operate, how they treat people, how they treat their customers, how they treat their investors, how they treat their employees.
How many deals you've done since you started the
at Snowflake?
Yeah, M&A deals.
We're coming up to probably 20 acquisitions at
20
Snowflake.
acquisitions. So out of 20, I'm curious about this. So you put all this effort, and this is like, I did this buyer-led framework, and this is like the first pillar is really having a clearly defined strategy. If you have a clearly defined strategy, it allows you to actually go be proactive and build those relationships.
Yeah.
And then what I'm curious about is, what does that look like when it unfolds? Because does it just happen? Does it turn,
really buyer-led, or is it really like a process?
Yeah, because it's inevitable at times, right? It's inevitable. If it's something that obviously the person has like multiple people inquiring, then they're probably going to hire a banker or something like that. So that's what I was curious about. 20 deals, how many of them actually end up in a bank process, and then what does that look like? Because sometimes it's a banker is in there, but it's still they're just facilitating versus running an actual competitive process. Other times they're running a competitive process.
Yeah.
And then I'm just curious, because you've invested in that time, what is the outcomes? How does it impact the outcomes of those scenarios?
We often get, banker processes. And I think if you have a relationship with the CEO at the time, I think that's going to be very helpful for your participation in that process. So I don't think there's ever a case in which a relationship that you have is going to hurt you in any type of process. For a buyer-led motion, obviously that's going to, CEO to CEO is incredibly important. And so cultivating that relationship over time and everyone's different. This is why M&A is so personal. Like, everyone acts different. And when you're doing deals, you've got different things that different folks care about. Some people care about the highest price, and that's all they care about. And others care about what's going to happen to my team. What's my charter when I join the company? Every seller has different motives. Every person is different, and you need to kind of dial in to understand what's their motivating factor. A relationship with the CEO and the relevant board member, like those are helpful. Are they in and of themselves ever going to stop a seller or a company that's being, or a company's being bought, not sold? Are they going to stop them testing the market? Depends how strong that relationship is. Depends on the price that you're talking about. Depends on the conviction that the relationship that the folks have. There's just a lot of different factors that come into play to say.
So out of 20 deals, how many ended up in a full blown auction, and then how many ended up just being represented, and how many were purely proprietary?
As I tried it, I'm just trying to think through the examples. I don't know the exact answers, but there's definitely some that are buyer led and that were done in a way which enabled us to get a deal done without having to go down the complications of an active process for one reason or another. I would say the norm is probably companies that are, and it happens, on a daily basis at this point in time, is, I'm testing the market, I'm raising my Series X, whatever it might be, not X, ABC, whatever it might be. But I've also kind of, one of these conversations has turned strategic. And so I'm talking to a handful of companies. And if I was going to think of anyone, I'd love to think of Snowflake as a potential outcome. Like, is this something of interest? Like that's the most common outreach that we get.
And that's somebody you've already talked to. And
Typically,
they're just responding back.
Typically, we could be an investor, we could be a partner, we could be, we might not be a partner, and we might be banker, an outreach. But so there's like, I guess to level up a little bit, part of what allows you to operate, I think, a little bit more efficiently is to have a good understanding as to where is the company going from a product perspective. What are the strategic priorities? How do we think about proactive M&A versus reactive M&A? And how do we have a buyer-led process versus, hey, this company's for sale, are you interested? Which we'll always look at. But I think you can cut through the noise a little bit if you're focused on what matters for you versus being reactive all the time.
Were any of those 20 deals came in from a banker book first time you heard about the company?
I don't think so. First time I've heard of the company is unlikely.
Yeah.
Usually, at a minimum, I've heard of the company.
Maybe haven't had a conversation.
Maybe not had a conversation.
Very proactive approach in terms of how you guys build pipeline and ultimately execute these deals.
We try to be as proactive as possible, but I think you need to be very receptive to being reactive. And I think having clarity on your strategy can help navigate those waters a lot more efficiently if you do have that clarity on where do we think M&A is going to be able to be most utilized, whether it be from a acqui-hire, product acquisition, or even, transformative. It's maybe a different case, but across the different spectrums of M&A.
So this is a big investment of time to build a relationship with all these CEOs. Yep. Date them, kind of understand the culture.
Yep.
And then things become actionable. How do you take that initial learning of culture and as a deal progresses, like really set up integration success?
But there's a rigorous diligence process. You learn from a lot of deals that you've done. Every deal you learn something new. We have pretty refined business cases that get put together that have how we're thinking about integration. What are the measures of success? What are the integration milestones? And over what time frames? It's documented. Everything's documented.
You basically create like an integration thesis.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's documented. There's an integration thesis. And by the way, it's something that you need to collaborate on with the target, right? And so you need to be at some, you're kind of are peeling the onion with every layer of diligence. And at some point you get to a place, once you've got through maybe the initial term sheet and you've agreed on price, the elephant in the room, and broad deal structure, things become a lot more collaborative because you're all on the same train of trying to get a deal done. And so it's not just a case of this is our view and this is how we're going to do it. And then, day one, the company comes in and it's like, right, how are we doing things? What's going on? It's like, no, we've been working on this for the last few weeks. We're in agreement on not only the integration plan, but the timeline and my charter. And so I think you start with a thesis, you refine and iterate internally, you get through an initial hurdle of let's just say the term sheet, and then you start to work increasingly collaboratively with the target to get to a place where there's high conviction on that integration plan, and you're acting as a team.
You're socializing the integration plan with the target.
At some point, you have to.
During confirmatory diligence?
And this is opening up in the process of getting married.
Right.
You have to start to open up, right? You do have to start to share, and they're going to start to share information that is increasingly sensitive. And I think as a buyer, you need to lean into that, right? It's a two-way thing. It's not just tell me, give me everything, and and I'll make the decision. It's collaborative. And by the way, founders have perspectives on what am I going to be doing? What's my charter? What's the team going to be doing? Are you going to split them up into the four corners of the company? Are we going to maintain a team, being a team? Do we have a goal? Do we have what's our responsibility? Who do we roll into? So what's the hiring plan?
If we get married, we're going to buy a little house on the prairie, get a chicken coop.
Yeah.
A bunch of dogs and cats running around.
Build the empire.
Like we want to be clear about that before.
Exactly. And so I think how do you build conviction? It's a process. You start with a thesis, you pressure test it, and then you collaborate on it, and you collectively own it. And at the point of signing the definitive agreement, we're already acting as a team. It's we and us, not you and me. And day one, it's like, right, let's go. Let's get this done.
You told me you did 8 deals in 1 year.
There was a year that was very busy.
Well, I'm curious about this part because you took all this stuff we've already talked about, right? There's a lot of effort, complexities, alignment, and accountability. Managing concurrent deals, I feel like, is its own challenge.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about, like, what have you learned from, because obviously you don't do 8 sequentially. Like, you're running some concurrent deals. And how do you do that without blowing up people?
You don't. It's the short answer. I think we've done three deals at one point in time, and they're obviously at different stages. And this is where you do need to start building the team out and making sure that both the corp dev team, but also the functional diligence and integration teams, because it's not, I think we can probably do those deals, but it does bear on the company and it distracts people from their day job. And this is incremental to their day jobs, right? So you do end up burning the midnight oil a little bit. It's deal-based work. When it comes, you got to be all on. And so it's we didn't do 3 deals off the bat, team of 1. It was, I had 2 deal leads, myself, with an analyst that was helping. We've got an integration manager that's working on the integration, that's orchestrating all the different functional diligence and integration teams. There's often 70 to 100 people on the integration team across all the different functions in the company, making sure that we're integrating the systems and processes and people, and so it's a big effort, but it's tough because there's different term sheets and deal terms and negotiation tactics to think through. The different dynamics of every deal. It's making sure that you're extremely organized, documenting things, and trying to stay on top of it. It's not something I would like to do, consistently, but it has happened.
Make sure you got the right people.
Right people. Yep. The right teams in place. Built that muscle so that it's not new to anyone.
They've done it before.
Mm-hmm. And look, some of them were smaller, so it was a lot easier to go and do the diligence and integration. These aren't huge deals that you're doing three concurrent, but yeah.
They can handle it. This is how we do things at Snowflake.
Amp it up.
Do you convince people to sell? Is it the relationship game and you're waiting for the phone call back or a call from the banker? Or
well, there's like the tactical of like on the economic side, right? There's an economic answer to that question, but I don't think we're trying to convince people to come and work at Snowflake. That's probably it's probably not the right deal to be doing. You need, I think often people see Snowflake as a scaled company by which the technology that target company has built can really impact the world. And so, I can't think of conversations that haven't really started that way. So I don't think convincing somebody to sell is like the right part to start.
Inspiring, it sounds like. You got the better together story.
And that's where the early discovery, right, is the early part of that relationship is, what would that better together story look like? Does that interest you? Trying to have a pretty open conversation up front, like, where's your heart and your head at? And is this something we should like lean in on, or is this something maybe you're not ready for? And this is where the founder needs to be like, yeah, no, I know. You need to start getting signals as early as you can. You don't want to be going down a process where there's just no chance this company's going to sell and you're trying to convince it the whole way. That sounds like a lot of wasted energy.
Inspire them to sell.
No.
Let them put the pieces together.
You want them to want it, right?
Yeah, it's almost a little bit
and there's something, when you get into these cycles of talking about a deal, there's generally some sort of excitement. You talk about the Gartner hype cycle. Like you start, and the more you engage, you're like, wow, this is going to be incredible. We're going to change the world, right? And then you get this like, this is amazing. And then it's kind of like, wow, like we need to integrate into this way, and this is going to take time, and you get into this trough of disillusionment, and then you get onto this path of like, all right, I see the light, and we've got a real path here. So, if you're starting off that beginning part of the hype cycle, I
think that the excitement's got to be seated within that company, the target CEO. Like they got to have some. It's almost like an organic excitement. It's not just...
I think so. And I think, you nurture and cultivate that through the CEO to CEO and leadership to leadership conversations that you have. And you're going to know pretty quickly coming out of that meeting whether it's like, oh, that's actually really cool. Like, and it's usually not one party saying that. Usually you come out both, hopefully both kind of thinking along those lines. But convincing somebody to sell, doesn't feel like the recipe for success.
Yeah, I'm gonna call Frank and ask him his question. Do you convince him to sell?
Yeah,
of course. Anything can do. Let's see. So I had when you're talking to CEOs, how do you know from like decipher between this is an M&A conversation versus the venture conversation? Because you even mentioned that you'll have folks that are at their next venture round, but then they're exploring M&A. How do you sort of look at that, opportunities of which hat to wear? Or does it just come up through those early conversations?
I think it goes back to something we talked about earlier, just being plugged into the business and understanding what's interesting from an M&A perspective and what's not. And so there's a lot of opportunities that come my way where it's clearly not going to be an acquisition opportunity for us, but there is often a partner motion. Given that they're raising, so we don't lead rounds, we typically participate in rounds. So given they're raising a round, they're like, is there a conversation to be had on the investment side, which then comes down to what is it from a product perspective that we're doing that's interesting? What is the movement of data? Do we have any joint customer success today? And if we did get into a room, is that what are the things that could be interesting to kind of really double down on from a product and engineering perspective that could lead to a better outcome for customers? And if there's something to talk about there, I think that's when ventures can be a lot more impactful. But deciphering between one or the other, it's making sure, again, you have alignment with where the product is going, what our strategy is, how we think about M&A, make sure we have alignment across the executives, and hopefully by understanding that, you at least know when something's interesting or not from an acquisition perspective. And if it is, then obviously there's a path to go and double click and learn more and, have the right conversations across both companies to start to hopefully get to a no, which is always the easy answer, or that's actually a little bit interesting. Why don't we go and do these one or two things more to learn more?
So if you're participating in these venture deals, you're not negotiating for a call on those deals?
A call option? Yeah. No. So right of first refusal, no. We ask for a right of notification. Yeah, ROFN.
Notification.
Right of first refusal.
I didn't know there's an acronym for it, ROFN.
Yeah, ROFN. Right of first notification, which is basically, we're going to invest. We're going to lean in on the partnership. We're going to try to give you some go-to-market benefits. We're going to try to, in good faith, do the right thing. And I think if you're going to sell the company, I just want a heads up. I don't want to read about it in the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times. I want a heads up. And that heads up is, hey, we've been approached. Before I sign anything that's exclusive, I'm just giving you your notification. I don't have the right to understand who the buyer is, how much it's for, but I do have the right to participate if I wanted to put an offer in, right? And then you get, as a founder, get the decision to make as to whether that's interesting or not. But at least I have a seat at the table when the decision's being made. I think that's a fair outcome.
That's fair. Can we talk about just some of the deals? Like, you don't have to name the company, but what are like a deal you're most proud about? Just want to hear like how it went down. And
yeah, Neva was a pretty cool deal. I mean, Sridhar's now our CEO. And so buying a company that ultimately ends up being the company that you work for as CEO is a pretty good, there's value that you're adding. I think as a corporate development professional, you're always trying to think about how am I bringing value to the table, and are these deals actually driving real business outcomes and success? And I think Sridhar's obviously an incredible leader and leading the ship at Snowflake now. It's been an incredible year and a half, maybe.
That's through an acquisition.
Sridhar's company, Neva, we acquired through an acquisition, and now Sridhar is our CEO.
Oh, wow.
So he that was obviously a really good deal for the company, and Sridhar's co-founder is the head of our engineering team, and it was really the foundation of a lot of what we do in AI today, and so an incredibly important acquisition for the company, and we've obviously got the most important leaders in our company now being driven by a lot of that company that came into Snowflake. So extremely, I think impactful acquisition. More recently, there's just been some. I mean, I'd say two more recent ones are pretty interesting. We acquired a company called Datavolo, which is now what Snowflake calls OpenFlow, which is a kind of a connectivity platform that allows a lot of data to come in by structured and unstructured into Snowflake. It's a whole framework that we've stood up upon the product we acquired, which has been extremely impactful. We announced it at our user conference. So again, I think when I answer these questions, it's like, what are the most successful? I guess I'm answering in the most impactful.
Yeah.
And then the most recent one we did was Crunchy Data, which is a whole new opportunity. It's a Postgres database in a managed service company, or has a managed service around hosting Postgres databases, and the prospect of weaving and integrating that into Snowflake, and the workloads that are going to be relevant for us as a company going forward, and the applications that are going to be more relevant, I think is extremely exciting. So top of mind, they're more recent ones, but yeah, those three have been pretty impactful, and hopefully continue to be successful at the company.
That would be so daunting, like joining your team at this time, because it's just matured so much when early days when I got to know Snowflake.
I'll take that as a compliment. Hopefully we've matured.
No, these are awesome to hear about some of those deals. And I guess what I wanted to lend into is just this current market we're in. I mean, it's just AI. Things are getting pulled under your rug in multiple different directions. And how do you keep up with it? We're in this tiny little space of M&A technology, and I can't even keep up with how many AI companies for M&A are popping up. I'm sure they're reaching out to you.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to you earlier, but companies just going from 0 to 10 to 100 million in a couple of years, which is just, it's unheard of. And the product market fit there is incredible. So how do you stay on top of it? It's just, continuing this theme of just being a student of your industry, a student of the product that you have, the landscape that you operate in, and the newest and most innovative technologies that are coming out in the world. And obviously that's AI today.
Teach me, how do you do this? How do you diligence these companies, even know you're buying the right thing?
You use AI.
A good answer.
Out of the box, knowing the right thing is like, it's not one thing. It's a combination of things, as we talked about earlier. It's having the right systems, processes, the right alignment, the right ownership, the right measurements of success, the right integration plan. All of that is like going to lead to whether a deal can be integrated and successfully kind of driven to hopefully the conclusion that you thought it would be. But staying on top of industry trends, it's I speak to a VC pretty much every day. I try to I pick these guys are putting money where their mouth is. They get their livelihoods are based on carry, and so they're investing a lot of time into a particular space, and I'll do your job. I'll question upon question and just be curious and inquisitive and understand the trends and double down on that and ask the same question to another founder or investor or whoever it might be, and then go and have a similar conversation internally. What do you think about this technology category? Have we thought about this? Are we looking to build? Are we looking to potentially integrate? What are your thoughts on that? And so this kind of hunger to always learn, always be curious, always question and make sure you understand. I think if you can continue to do those types of things, again, lead you to be the student of your profession, you're going to be much better situated to go and figure out how to navigate the waters in a fastly evolving AI market.
Got to do your homework.
Got to do your homework.
When you look at just this AI landscape and all these companies popping up, like how do you even keep tabs on them? That's something I'm even struggling with. My tracker just gets longer and longer every day.
The tracker does get long, yeah. Keeping tabs, so yeah, there's obviously the logistical, like how do you keep tabs and track and document and make sure you're kind of keeping tabs on them. I think for companies that are either AI relevant or being built, in and around data and AI and thinking about Snowflake. I think that's where the Snowflake for startup teams is really helpful in having a feed of information. It's almost like a little bit like a pipeline, more on the venture and partnership side versus M&A, but it's always good to know kind of who's doing well in and around the ecosystem. As it relates to AI, there's a huge push in the company to be, increasingly AI forward. We've got some incredible initiatives out there. We've got the Cortex REST API service that can abstract the complexity of which underlying foundation model you want to have and use for put your data against or have your application run against. The whole Cortex service with Cortex Analyst, Cortex Search, and Snowflake Intelligence, which is an intelligence layer across all of your data where you get to ask questions of your data. There's so much activity happening with companies building on top of those primitives that Snowflake builds. It's extremely exciting. And one of the good things is we have a lot of telemetry on the activity and the consumption that these startups are making happen within Snowflake. So there is a data kind of feed that you have that helps kind of understand who's driving the best outcomes, what are the signals from customers that we're getting. So that's obviously one way we keep abreast of it. But
that's a smart way to do it. You got a big startup ecosystem.
We've got a big startup ecosystem. We get a lot of data. There's a whole separate kind of partnership team as well outside of the strategic partnerships that I manage that are managing a lot of those relationships and making sure that we're kind of tagging the right, making the right kind of tags or getting them to provide the right telemetry to ultimately give us information to help make them successful to the extent they're able to be successful. So there's a lot happening. And when I just kind of level up a little bit, when you talk about a lot of the Cortex, the AI services that we provide, the principle behind how we are relevant is that whether you're a company or a startup, you're able to use the most innovative AI technologies against your data. From a customer perspective, it's going to allow increased business outcomes. I think from a partner perspective, it allows you to get access to a lot more data to drive those business outcomes. And I'll answer a question you haven't answered, but one of the more interesting areas I think that we're spending a lot of time is agents are everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And agents are the ability to kind of act as if a knowledge worker and pick your function. And if you can empower knowledge workers with obviously the AI capabilities that are generic, but also specific and bespoke to your data, your needs, I think Snowflake's an incredible platform to think about as you look to use AI to drive those business outcomes.
I'm going to revisit it. I'm like, we're in Deal Room. We got to figure out how we can leverage and connect with Snowflake, especially so many organizations.
We should work together on that.
We should. I think there's some opportunity there. I got a couple just quick little fire questions before we wrap up here.
Let's go.
Well, I want to know, what's the top thing that you look for when you talk to these founders, CEOs of companies? Like, what is the top trait that gives you a good signal that this is a strong company to talk to?
From a culture or company perspective?
I mean, I think both.
I mean, look, from a company perspective, I think customers' success speaks volumes. If customers are willing to pay for something, there's obviously real value there. And so what's the traction? What do those retention rates look like? What's the growth profile look like? How net new customers coming on board? What are the growth patterns there? So I think customer data points and customer metrics speaks volumes and obviously rolls into revenue. From a culture perspective, I like to meet founders that are hungry, are humble, and know how to hustle.
That's ideal.
Being humble is underrated. I think having humility and the ability to kind of appreciate one's perspective, but have strong conviction in your own opinion, and being willing to kind of debate and talk through things, I think is an extremely appealing trait. But I think in this world of AI, if you don't have hustle, you're not going far.
Those are good. I think they even get harder as you like start achieving success. All of a sudden, it gets harder to be humble and
it does. When you start to see success, it's hard to have those three: hungry, humble, and.
Unfortunately, I got immigrant parents. I go visit them. They remind me.
They remind them.
Yes. I need you to go help sweep the floor. And if you can tell me what are like the red flags? Just what are the red flags I should look out for to run away from a deal early on?
Usually you're speaking to just the founder or CEO. So the red flags are probably going to be from conversations with them. I would say signals on prioritizing outcomes for an individual versus thinking about the broader mission and team.
Yeah.
Having founders that care about the joint mission going forward, that care about how their employees are treated, versus folks economically will try to solve for the highest dollar, but like there's within reason, right? There's obviously it needs to be the price needs to be right, but I think equally important is landing on the right mission and having the right message to deliver to their team. And if that starts to become out of focus, I think that's a red flag.
It's a really good point. There's got to be more than yourself.
Yes.
What's the craziest thing you've seen in M&A?
I haven't seen as many crazy things or heard as many crazy things as you have, but I would say in line with it's not done till it's done. The deal's not done till that you've signed on the dotted line. I think we've been down at least one process I remember pretty far down a path, pretty much ready to go and sign a deal, only to be informed by the CEO that an offer 3 times the amount has been put on the table, which at the time was already a pretty high price for the company, the size and the scale that they were, and so it just it goes to say that no deal is done until it's done. Don't count your chickens before they hatch, and caught us a little off guard, but these things happen. So
one of the big 3 came in overpaid.
No comment.
That's technically it's big 4, but yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that's wow. That happens. Not good. Not fun.
No, it wasn't fun. A lot of effort for nothing. No outcome. But again, deals happen. That's part of the
if
business.
a seller, you could have a breakup fee if the seller breaks out, but then, if the buyer breaks out, right? If the buyer doesn't commit, you can have a breakup fee. But if the seller falls out, there's nothing.
There was no breakup fee in the deal.
Yeah, because you wouldn't do that.
No.
Well,
No.
Stefan, this is a great conversation. I really appreciate taking a break from doing deals to help me become a better M&A scientist.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the time. Good conversation.
If anyone is still listening to this, you made it all the way to the end. You are my fellow brother, sister, M&A scientist out there. I love to hear from you. Reach out to me LinkedIn. I love to hear your ideas for topics, criticism. I take it. It's how I get better at doing this. And then till next time, here's to the deal.